Hi, my name is Alexis Jones, and we are the Dream Team. Today, we will be discussing the Klamath case.
Hi, my name's Julia Arvizu.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rice.
And I'm Ashley Fuller. And today we will be analyzing the ongoing debate over the Klamath River water. For a bit of background, the Klamath River Basin covers over 16,000 square miles across southern Oregon and northern California. Indigenous tribes are the primary settlers of the Klamath River Basin and rely heavily on the river for fishing as well as their cultural identity. These tribes were able to find a balance between sustainable yields of fish, balance between consumption, and regeneration of natural resources. This all changed when the European settlers overtook parts of the indigenous lands, as well as the introduction of the gold rush, which made leeway for contaminating the river that was used as their main water source. The main ethical issue surrounding the Klamath River Basin is that there's too much water being promised to too many people with vastly different wants and needs. Supporting issues caused by this include ecosystem concerns such as contaminated waters as a result of the dam being built to benefit the farmers, as well as declines in fish populations. The inability to provide for families is an issue being seen on both sides of the fence, as farmers are unable to obtain enough water to grow the crops they use as revenue to support their family, as well as the Klamath tribe being unable to fish due to the declining populations of fish, which is their main source of food, while living in a poverty-stricken food desert. Energy sources must change if the dam is removed, as the dam provides cheaper hydroelectric power, allowing for water to be pumped to crops and cattle. The salmon population is suffering due to the parasites from contaminated waters, as well as not being able to migrate upstream due to the dam blocking their passages. Salmon also transfer nutrients from the mountains to the ocean and vice versa, so without salmon, a collapse of the environment is a probable outcome. Finally, land ownership rights are being debated because the Klamath tribes believe they deserve land reparations due to their land being taken away from them unwillingly. And the farmers believe that they deserve the land because of the historical promise of the Klamath Irrigation Project, where they were promised a usable dam and irrigation infrastructure in order to grow crops and sustain their own families. The key stakeholders here are the farmers, nonprofit environmentalist groups, the Klamath tribes, PacifiCorp, and local and federal governments. Now, Madeline will discuss the critical interests of these stakeholders as well as the impact of the ethical issues.
The conflicts between the interests of stakeholders are that they have different needs and wants regarding the support of the dams. The farmers are in support of the dams, whereas the Klamath tribe, environmentalists, PacifiCorp, and the governments are against them for the following reasons. The decline of fish populations in the basin has negatively affected the 4 Native American tribes. With the construction of the dams, the salmon population declined because their habitats were affected. With increasing poverty rates, these tribes depend on fishing for subsistence and as an important part of their cultural heritage. They support the removal of the dams in an effort to rebuild their ecosystems, provide for their families, and earn back their cultural identity. The farmers are interested in the dams because they depend on water for crops in order to make a healthy living. The dams provide cheap hydroelectric power, allowing irrigators to pump water to crops and cattle. If the dams were removed, there would be higher electric costs for them. For environmentalists, there are many different nonprofit organizations either based in the Klamath Basin or with an influence in the region. These organizations have different goals concerning fishing and recreation, water users, tribal rights, and wildlife protection. The interorganization priorities and challenges have led to the formation of diverse coalitions supporting or opposing the removal of the dams. Over half of the land in Klamath is federally owned, so the federal government has an outsized presence in the region. There are many different agencies that have a stake in the region, which can cause tension between the agencies and their decisions. PacifiCorp argues that the dams require an increase in costs and are considered high hazard. Now Julia will be talking about the ethical framework.
We are analyzing this case under the ethical framework of act utilitarianism. This framework is best described that the act is morally right if it produces the best possible results for the greatest amount of people. Our team will be discussing later our recommended course of action, as well as our short and long-term consequences, and they will go more in depth on why we believe this theory is the best fit. With our team's recommended course of action, the farmers will not benefit completely in terms of their water demand for current crops. But our proposed course of action will help provide a better energy source, lower ecosystem concerns, and environmental damages, such as pollution of the water as stated by Ashley. With all of these, it will create the most amount of good for the most amount of people. The Klamath case highlights the long-standing and complex issues that often revolve around water and land disputes in the U.S. With the effects of dwindling resources and climate change, based on the aforementioned ethical framework, our proposed solution is as follows. In order to maximize their triple bottom line, Pacific Corp should re-engage in talks with relevant stakeholders, much like those that founded the 2010 water rights agreements. By including stakeholders in conversations about future development on the Klamath River, Pacific Corp can ensure that they are consulting the affected parties and work towards a solution that favors everyone. In terms of profit, Pacific Corp should consider implementing both standard and floating solar arrays. This could compensate for the decrease in power to local residents and decrease in revenue for Pacific Corp. Additionally, solar arrays offer favorable environmental impacts. Floating solar arrays limit parasites and algae as they cool the water below them, giving juvenile species time to mature into adulthood without fear of parasites. Additionally, when crops are planted under standing arrays, they retain more moisture and provide larger yields. As the effects of climate change become more prominent, it is important that Pacific Corp minimize their footprint. While several dams are scheduled for removal, it is important to remove them in a way that minimizes the sediment and soil displacement for wildlife and farmers, such as a staged dam removal. Moving to less environmentally intrusive energy sources like solar power can also help Pacific Corp do their part to maintain what is left of the flora and fauna in the Klamath Basin. Alexis will now discuss more in depth on our recommended course of action, the short and long-term consequences, and the potential environmental, social, and financial impacts.
Pacific Corp can expect a number of short-term and long-term outcomes in response to our proposed solution. We'll start with the short-term outcomes. Firstly, financing the installation of solar panels is costly. Additionally, it costs approximately $144 to generate 1 megawatt hour of electricity using solar power, as opposed to the approximate $90 it costs to generate the same amount of electricity using hydropower. In addition to financing solar power, dam removal is costly. Discussions have been ongoing about whose job it is to contribute to financing the removal of the dams, and we expect these conversations to continue to be ongoing. Consequently, because of the high cost of dam removal, local governments have opposed their removal, citing a raise in taxes for their constituents. These same constituents have complained about loss in property value and the aesthetic value of their property if the dams are removed because of flooding and sediment displacement. Now to the long-term outcomes. In the long term, there is a finite amount of water left on the Klamath Basin. Finding a solution that fits all stakeholders will take considerable time and effort, especially as resources continue to dwindle. Secondly, solar powers in relation to farming and floating solar arrays are relatively new technologies. Pacific Corp can expect to become very knowledgeable on the practicality, the feasibility, and the sustainability of such technology should they choose to implement them. Lastly, as water continues to dwindle, Pacific Corp should focus on working with and around government agencies as they seek to conserve and protect resources. Should Pacific Corp choose to move toward more environmentally friendly technologies, they can hope to expect a revival of endangered species in the area, as well as fostering a healthy relationship with surrounding communities because of this.